This video, I'm going to show you how to fully disassemble a CZ52. All right, getting into it, we will drop the magazine. We have a heel release right here. We'll just drop that. And we'll put our magazine off to the side as we're not going to need it. You want to pull your slide back a tiny bit. Pull down on these tabs on the front. Your slide's going to go forward a tiny bit. Then we're going to lift it up and out. And that just pulls this plunger down so that that barrel can get enough clearance to pop off the top. Next, we will disassemble the slide. This gun has a roller lock system. There are your rollers, and then we have our locking block right here. So to get the barrel out, you need to grab something. Here I have a punch. You're going to stick it into this hole in the block, pull it forward so that those rollers disengage, and then you're going to lift it up and out. And your spring just comes straight off the front. So next thing, we can take out our firing pin. We have our firing pin block right here, and all you need to do is push it down and then kind of just play with it, and your firing pin should more or less drop out. And just a side note, these firing pins are actually very delicate, so this is a gun that you do not want to dry fire. And right here we have our firing pin block. We have our firing pin block spring right here. And then we can just pull that out from the firing pin safety. And then you can reinsert it, which we will leave it like that so we do not lose that spring. All right, next we will remove our extractor. To do that, there's a pin at the top right here that holds it in. Here I have a 3/32 size punch. We will just punch this pin out. So that pin is removed. So now you can just lift up your extractor, and the extractor spring is right here. We can just lift that out more or less. Do not lose this, obviously. All right, so that is your slide disassembly. You can remove your rear sight if you want to, but there's not much point in that. And we'll put this off to the side. All right, starting off with the frame, we have this flat spring kind of plate that's retaining your grips, grip panels. We'll just get something plastic to remove that, and then your grips will come right off. We can remove our hammer spring right here. So this is connected to your magazine release. So what I like to do is just kind of tilt it out of place and just kind of ease it out like so. And then your arm right here comes out along with your hammer spring. We'll remove our plunger and then our slide hold open arm. This big round part is where it's coming out from, and you're going to put your punch on this pin to push it out. So we can punch this pin out that's holding in the plunger and then your slide lock bar. So when you get to about right here, this pin is clear of your plunger. So you can put some pressure down on your plunger. It is spring loaded, and then you can remove your punch and then slowly let up on your plunger, remove your plunger, and then your plunger spring. Now we can finish taking out this pin. We'll put that over here. And then your arm just kind of slides out. Next, we will work on getting this plate off. You can see right here, there is a seam. Punch our trigger pin. That's about good. I'll show you right here just how far I pushed it out. It's about a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch there. Then we have our sear pin, and we will just punch that sear pin out about the same distance, being careful not to push it all the way through. And we're just punching that pin out enough to clear this plate so it doesn't give any resistance when we're taking it off. Do not punch this pin all the way through because this sear spring will fly off on you and it is not fun to find. All right, next we can take off this hex nut that is screwed onto your threaded hammer pin. And it usually is staked, so make sure to get that staking off before you unscrew this. You could mess up your threads. So I have a 6mm ratchet here. All right, so we have that loose enough to just take off by hand. See right here, there is your hex nut, and then your hammer pin just pushes out from this side. See here, that is your hammer pin. And we'll keep this hex nut with it. That way it's harder for it to get lost. And then your hammer just slides out without that pin holding it in. We can go ahead and take our plate off. We will pull it up from the back first. And it is going to take a little bit of shimming. But on the front, you can see there's a little lip, and that fits into this lip on the frame. Now that we have the plate off, we can go ahead and remove our trigger and our connector bar. And you can see how it's set up right here. We have another pin at the top of the trigger that's holding in our trigger spring. And then the arm connects to it as well. We can pull up our connector bar, and then this pin that's in your trigger just kind of slides out with no effort. But your trigger spring sits like this in your trigger with that pin in there. Take good note of how this spring is looking for when you reinstall it. So next we will remove our sear right here and our sear spring, and we will just punch that pin the rest of the way out. I will cover the top of it with my fingers, so that way whenever that pin is all the way pushed down, it won't let the spring shoot off. Lift up on your sear, get it out of there, being careful not to let your sear spring shoot off. And we'll go ahead and punch out our sear pin. And once we get all the way through, we can remove our ejector arm right here. We can go ahead and remove our safety selector right here. And this just kind of wiggles out, pushes up, and then you just kind of wiggle it free. You do have to play with it a little bit, but eventually it will come out once you get the right orientation. And then finally, we can remove our safety spring slash bolt hold open spring right here. That is your CZ52 fully disassembled. All right, now putting it back together, we'll start where we left off. We'll go ahead and put our safety slash slide hold open spring in. You have two sides. You have one with a long arm, then one with a little short arm with kind of a curve to it. So this long arm is going to fit on the inside here. And then the short arm is going to fit going over your frame forward right there so it can catch your slide hold open. Now we'll take our safety selector. We'll push that back on through. And we'll just play with it until it goes through on the other side, like that. Next, we will insert our ejector arm, and that just sits in this groove here, just like so. All right, now this is going to be one of the harder parts, which is reinserting your sear. And just before we do that, I will go ahead and explain how this spring fits in here. You can take a good look at it and see exactly how it's oriented. But if your frame is like this, your sear is going to sit in there in this orientation. So this is your sear spring, obviously, and how it's going to sit is you're going to have this kind of eld off arm part sitting over your sear, just like that. Take a good look at it, and then we're going to have this leg sticking out the front, tilted downward. But just make sure that this little eld portion is sitting on top of your sear. Then we will get our sear pin. We'll push that through and hold it in that orientation. All right, so we are going to reinsert our sear just like this, and this little leg sticking out. And that little spring is going to fit right here, pushed up against this piece of the frame. So what we're going to do is we're going to tilt it forward, and then we are going to push it down, and we're going to put spring pressure on it while we're pushing it in. Try to line the pinhole up and then push this the rest of the way through to hold it in place. What I'm doing is I am pushing this in like that. You can see I'm butting up the spring on that part. Now I'm pushing it in and down. All right, once you have it kind of lined up, just try to get that pin knocked in there through the frame hole, and then we'll just tap it in enough to hold it in place. You can see right here, it's making contact with the frame. Now your sear is not going anywhere. We can reinsert our trigger and connector rod. Just to clarify, here's your trigger. Obviously it's going to be sitting in the gun like that. Your trigger is going to go onto your trigger pin with the bottom hole, or the hole closest to the opening of your frame. And then this spring right here is going to be sitting in your trigger on the top hole, just like that. So right here, this little elled and clawed piece, this is going to fit into your trigger bar on the rear. It's going to hold in just like that. You can see right here, this arm at the bottom of your spring is going to be oriented so that it's pushing up against your actual trigger pin. So it's going to rest on it like that. And we will put it in the correct orientation on our trigger. We'll get this pin, put it inside so that spring will not move. Take note of the orientation of this spring. And we're going to cock it back, making sure to keep the spring behind that trigger pin. As you can see, you try it out and you're not getting this, or you're getting any kind of resistance, your spring is not oriented right. Now we can get our connector bar, and we will just push that in onto the spring. You can see right here, that is the top of the spring, and then it's sitting on the pin that's on the inside of your frame. Okay, now that we have our trigger and trigger connecting bar in, we will go ahead and reinsert our hammer and hammer pin. So we have our hammer right here. It's going to sit like that in the pistol. And then we have our pin and little hex nut. Take that off. So we're going to put our hammer side, line up the hole right there. Then we're going to take our hammer pin, push it through. And we're going to match that groove with the red protrusion sticking out. Now we have the pin through, and we can put on our side plate. So as you can see right here, there is a groove in that side plate, and that's going to fit right here. We're going to start by pushing it in to this side. Then we're going to lower it into place. And there is a bit of protruding metal right here. As you can see, we're going to just kind of push down and shimmy it just a little bit so that we can clear that protrusion and fit the plate back on flush. Now that we have that plate on, we can go ahead and put our hex nut back on. And I will just go ahead and thread that on to start. So let me grab my little ratchet and we will tighten that back down. And you don't want to do it too tight, because if you do it too tight, then the components inside will basically lock up on you. So you want to do it just tight enough to keep that hex nut on. That way it doesn't affect your trigger or anything else. So we're just going to check, make sure our trigger and trigger bar move freely, make sure our hammer cocks back and releases. Now that we have our side plate back on, we can go ahead and push these pins back to the position they go. We'll start with our trigger pin right here. It's going to stick out a tiny bit on either side, but that trigger pin is good. Now we can go ahead and punch in our sear pin. So your sear pin is going to be a little bit past the frame on both sides. You can see right here that sear pin is pushed in further than the surface of the frame, just a tiny bit on both sides. So it should not be sticking out on either side. That's so the slide has clearance to go back on the frame. So if you ever put this back together and then this pin is sticking out on either side, You'll put your slide on, you'll try to rack it back, and it'll be locked in the forward position. If that happens, then this pin is sticking out on either one of these sides and it's making contact with the slide. So it will not go back because it is physically blocked. Now we'll throw in our plunger and then our slide hold open bar. We'll go ahead and tilt it up, get that arm underneath the frame, line it up with this hole, and we'll just start this pin just a little bit, just a tiny bit. Make sure it's not protruding from right there. Now we can insert our plunger and plunger spring. We'll go ahead and drop our spring in like that. And then your plunger is going to face this way. And then you push it down like so. And then you can knock this pin back in. Just knock it all the way until it stops. So after you put your slide hold open, you can take this spring and put it up top of that bar. And that is exactly how it goes. This part of the spring has to be over that ledge for your slide hold open to work properly. This is a little bit tricky, but you are going to have to insert this heel release at the same time of inserting your hammer, arm, and spring. We are going to get this. We're going to place it in there. Just wiggle it around so you can get in the proper spot. So if you can see right here, what we're trying to do is get this arm to basically just go up inside the hammer like that. And once it's reinserted, it will catch on the hammer pin. So there's no real need to worry about it being perfect right now. With that hole and the spring matching up with the hole in the release, then we're going to push down on it with our screwdriver, using it for leverage. Then we're going to sneak it back into place. And I know you really couldn't see that, but hopefully you get the idea. We have it about there. And then from here, you can pretty much just push it with your thumb, just like that. I know I didn't really give you a good look on it, but hopefully you get the idea from that. Now to finish off the frame, we just have to put our grips back on. Take your little clip right here, make sure it's oriented right, and you're just going to push that clip back in. All right, your frame's done. We can leave that up there. Now we will put our slide back together, starting off with our extractor. Get your extractor spring. We're going to place it back into its hole. So we're going to get our extractor pin. We're going to place it back into the hole. And then we're just going to start it a little bit. Now we can get our extractor. Obviously make sure it's facing the right way. Make sure the claw is facing forward. It won't really fit in any other way, but just so you know. And we're just going to kind of push it in against the extractor spring. So this pin is going to sit past the opening of this hole, and it's also going to sit past the opening of this hole, kind of similar to your sear pin. I think I got it pretty good. It's not protruding on either side, so that pin is perfect where it is. All right, next we can insert our firing pin and firing pin block. We will get our firing pin block, place it into the hole along with the spring, obviously. Just kind of make sure that it is facing the proper direction. When your pin goes in, it's going to be oriented like so. Just drop your pin back in. Might have to shimmy it a little bit to get clearance, but it should go in more or less. Now we can put in our barrel and our recoil spring. Just place your recoil spring back on the barrel. Place it in like so, and then we're going to use a punch to pull back on that block. Then just push it forward and then release it. So we're going to line up our slide, push down on it, and just pull it back. And then it locks into place. All right, guys, that is your full disassembly and reassembly of a CZ52 pistol. Hopefully it's not too difficult for you guys to figure out. The only other video on this is about 12 years old and the camera quality is not the best. So I figured I'd just make another video on how to fully disassemble and reassemble this for anyone who's doing this currently. That way you get a little bit better quality and hopefully a more detailed disassembly video. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed, hope you learned something, and happy shooting.